Hi, I'm Jonathan Weinberg, and this is Drawing with Fountain Pens. Today I'm going to talk about another Grail pen that I recently got, and it really points to the way in which the fountain pen obsession begins, where you start, using fountain pens and buying relatively inexpensive fountain pens, and then as you begin to get more and more into it, it gets increasingly more expensive, and you have to resist the temptation to buy really beautiful pens that you can't afford. Anyway, one way or the other, I was again looking at eBay, and a very good deal came up, and I went for it and got this pen, which is one of the pens that I actually never thought that I ever would be able to afford. This is the Toledo Pelikan M900. And what makes this particularly special, at least for me, is that it is from the first run when this pen was first created in 1992. Now, this is sort of a controversial thing about this pen. And this information comes from the Pelikan Perch, which is a really incredible website, has a lot of history in it, and I will put a link in the description of this video so you'll know where to get that information. But when this pen first came out, Pelikan said that it was going to be a collector's edition. They were only going to make 500, and it was at that time quite expensive. I think it was about $1,250, and people went and bought it thinking that it would be a fantastic collector's item. And guess what? It was so popular and people liked it so much that they came out with a regular edition of the pen, and they continue to make this pen to this day. And at least in the beginning, the regular edition was less expensive by a few $100s than the original special edition. Whether it's collectible or not is that it's very beautiful. And I want to talk about that. It's beautifully handmade, beautifully crafted, and I think, it really is something like a work of art, and is among the most beautiful pens that I own. And at the same time, it's not so weird or unusual looking that you can't actually write with it or draw with it. And it is actually a pen that is, in terms of its nib and its ink flow, is equivalent in size to the M900, which is my favorite pen. So it has a very nice nib, and I will talk more about that. As always, if you find this interesting and you want to support the channel, don't forget to subscribe. So here's the pen. It is really gorgeous. It is carved and made with a combination of silver and gold in a method called damascene. It goes all the way back to Damascus, Syria, and it's spread throughout the world, really, during the Middle Ages, as far as I know, as the Arab world sort of spread, of course, northern Africa and all the way to Spain, and also through trade routes to China. So I'm not going to go into the complicated way in which someone creates this, but it involves engraving, and it also involves a process which means using very high temperature. And supposedly, a Pelikan only can make around 200 of these a month. This pen, as I said before, was made in 1991, but I don't think it comes to market till 1992. And it was the first, or one of the first pens that was a special edition. Actually, I think the green M900 demonstrator pen was the first in a series of special editions, but this also was a special edition, and you can see that it has Well, I think you can see that it has engraved on it a pelican. The Pelikan, and I'm always now saying Pelican because I've been told that that's perfectly fine rather than Pelikan. The Pelikan comes from the crest of Gunther Wagner, and that's its source. The idea of the pen being called Toledo is because this method of engraving and then using high temperature and fusing silver and gold and to create this sort of black high contrast between the black and the gold is something that is particularly associated with Toledo. As you know, the Moorish invasion, I guess you would call it, or expansion goes all the way up to Spain. And so Spain has this wonderful combination of different styles of the Renaissance combining with Islamic decorative motifs. Islamic art does not allow for human figures in building decoration and religious decoration, so it is particularly apt in the way it makes beautiful ornament, and animals are allowed in ornament. Now, of course, that is the official story where this beautiful design comes from. I think actually it relates as much to revival styles that are happening in the 1930s. Now, the Toledo pen, the M900 pen, which this is, as I said, was first introduced in 1991 or 1992 is when maybe you could get it. There was an earlier M700, which was smaller, and that's, I believe, in the 1980s. But the actual kind of pen and design goes all the way back to 1931. And I think this general drawing or design has a real Art Deco feel to it. And it reminds me more of decoration that you see in the kind of fabulous Art Deco revival theaters. For example, there's one on 175th Street in New York, now called the United Palace, that dates from 1930, exactly around the time of the original designs for this kind of pen. And I think it has this sort of quality. It also is kind of wonderful in the way in which they have mixed so many different influences, whether it's Renaissance and Moorish and Egyptian. It's all sort of thrown together in something that underneath it all is a kind of geometry that I think relates to Cubism, if you want to put that in there too. So it doesn't quite look like something that is ancient, and there's a kind of flatness to it, but a kind of iconic quality which I associate with the 20th century. And I think that's all happening in this pen. I love Art Deco things. And although I think you can argue, well, boy, this is a bit much, I think it works. And I think one of the things what works about it is that it still retains the pen form. It's not breaking out of that, and it works as a pen. It feels in your hand. It's the same size as the M800, and so I can write with it. There are a lot of pens that are designed to be works of art that don't feel so good in your hand. That said, I prefer the regular M800 because this is heavier, and you do feel the engraving in your hand. So I think if you were going to write with this all the time, this kind of a pen, I would stick with the M800. Of course, like the M800, this is a piston filler pen. Pelikan is one of the companies that really was at the forefront of developing the piston filler. Like the M800, you turn this to operate the piston. Like the M800 also, though, when you post it, and of course it posts very securely, although people, when they have a collectible pen, sometimes don't like to post it. because they're afraid they're going to scratch it. But one of the great things about the way this is designed is that when you pull the cap off or on, or you turn it, it doesn't turn the piston. And that's, I think, a very important design consideration if you're going to design a piston pen. It has a beautiful two-tone nib that's 18 karat. I think there are some models of this pen, early pens, that may have had 14 karat nibs on them, but this one's 18 karat. The pen came with a really beautiful box, and it sort of shows you actually what the design is flattened out about what the pen design is with these wonderful Pelikans. And as I say, the Pelikan relates to the heritage of Gunther Wagner, but it also goes all the way back to being a kind of a favorite bird of the Egyptians. They thought that the pelican sort of wards against snakes, and it appears in a lot of hieroglyphics. And I think that's another thing here, that although the pen is named Toledo because of the technique in which the pen is done and this kind of metal work, a lot of the design, I think, goes all the way back to really Egyptian design, as well as Art Deco. And Art Deco was interested in reviving and using Egyptian design in many of its motifs. See that? So when you open it up, it's a beautiful box, and it came with the certificate saying that it was 170. I believe JG is the actual craftsperson, relates to the craftsman person who made it. So my pen is 170 of 500. The pen itself is not numbered. It also came with this little brochure. From what I understand, other people had have brochures that talk about how the pen is one, is unique and a special edition, and there will never be another one. And then people got very angry when it turned out that they then started making them in a non-special edition and started selling them. They got so angry, someone got so angry that they in fact sued Pelikan, and that is all discussed in the online in the Pelikan Perch website. It tells you the history of the lawsuit, as people were upset that their pen that they had paid so much as a collectible was suddenly not such a great collectible back in seemingly in 1992, but now certainly is a collectible today. Looking at the pen, what makes it different? Now, obviously, I don't have the kind of money to buy a 1992 version and one of the versions that you can buy today, but there are only very subtle differences between this supposed collector's edition. For example, it says West Germany on the cap because it was still being used by Pelikan in 1992. And it has these numbers and I think letters, and it's hard to see, but all the way down below here. You can see that there is this, on the bottom, this kind of, this is 24 karat plated. And you can see that it has one, you can see the Pelikan on the finial with one chick. It very much looks in that way, resembles, in the bottom and the top, it relates to the Souverain M900 from the 90s. I have one of those. And so you can see that how this relates to the classic pen. Let's see, is this going out of focus? Cool, right. And for the most part, this M900 is pretty similar now. I have one, I guess has been made in the last 5 years, or maybe even sooner, more recent. This is a blue one. This is the, shows some of the changes. They don't have, the bottom isn't the same. and it's also laser. I think at the top is laser rather than etched on the top. And then what is very controversial in the newer pens is that it's no longer translucent, it's a different material. So here you can see three different pens, and as I say, it's different, it's beautiful, it's obviously ornate, but it's not over the top. I think it's very elegant, and to me it has this wonderful Art Deco look to it. It most reminds me of a lot of the things that are made, not just actually Art Deco, but also late 19th century or 19th century Egyptian revival. And I think for the history of the 20th century in terms of dealing with fountain pens, pens in general, and how you ornament them, it's actually a pretty tough job. It's a simple form. It's a form that looks probably best in some ways just a simple black, right? And if you go too far, it can look really kind of kitschy and overdone. And at the same time, you don't want to interfere with the hand, So if you do something too deeply engraved, it's gonna interfere with the actual process of writing. So I think this does a very good job of balancing those two things. And given it's a work of art, I am going to do something different that I don't usually do. I'm going to draw with it, but I'm going to draw a picture of my hand drawing with the pen. I have to admit that I probably am not going to write with this pen very much. It is just too valuable, and I'm too afraid of dropping it. And that's another problem with pens that are really collectible and beautiful. You feel like, oh my God, I can't even use it. And that's not so great. I think you should always get fountain pens, for the most part, that you can use. So I will write with the pen, draw with the pen, and then I will see you later. How does this thing write? So this is the Pelikan, Toledo. It's the M900. And this is Waterman, Serenity, Blue. This is Rodeo Paper. Has a little bit of flex to it. It's very smooth, very typical, I think, of a Pelikan pen. Might be a little rougher than my go-to M900. Very good. Very wet. Beautiful. Feels quite heavier than a normal M800, and so that if I was writing with this all the time, it might tire my hand.